Hello my dear friends, you're in the MilitarySummary channel, and in this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And of course, this morning the most important updates are coming from the United States of America, where yesterday, on the 28th of December, a meeting between Zelensky and the President of the United States of America took place. That was probably the most important meeting of 2025 that finished without any results, but neither for Ukrainians, for Russians, or for Americans. Once again, the parties promised each other once again somewhere in the future, maybe in January. But anyway, the meeting was very interesting, and this meeting revealed lots of cards, lots of details. For example, this is one of the most, let's say, favorable moment from my side. Here we can see how Zelensky arrived in Florida, but as you can see, nobody met Zelensky. He was met just by his crew, and this is a signal. This was a signal that the meeting was going to be very tough for Zelensky. And the meeting didn't stop, and the President of the United States of America had posted a very interesting statement. He said that he just had a good conversation and very productive telephone call with President Putin of Russia prior to meeting at 1 p.m. today with President Zelensky of Ukraine. So that was the second strike that the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, suffered before the meeting started. And furthermore, the President of State stated that right after the end of the meeting with Zelensky, he would call the President of Russia once again to describe everything we discussed with Zelensky. So that was a very interesting meeting, and if you ask my opinion, I was waiting for a scandal, but nothing like this happened. The meeting was more or less normal, but as I told you, this meeting ended without results. So the President of Russia and the President of States most likely expected that Zelensky would accept the plan or the proposal or a document that Russia and the United States of America are working with, but nothing like this happened. Once again, the parties promised each other once again somewhere in January. Lots of issues and questions were discussed. The parties were talking about the reconstruction of Ukraine. The President of State stated that Russia would take part in this reconstruction process with the cheap energy or something like this. They were talking about security guarantees, and many other different things were discussed. Another important detail is that the President of Ukraine asked Donald Trump to provide Ukraine 50 years of security guarantees. According to information we have, according to media, Trump proposed Ukraine 15 years of security guarantees, but Zelensky asked a bit more. But all these things are very important, but probably the most important thing took place not even between the President of States and the President of Ukraine. The most important thing most likely happened between the President of Ukraine and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Zelensky, right before this meeting started, made a very interesting article in his social media. He stated that, "Thank you, care for the constant coordination. I started my morning in Florida today with a detailed phone call with the United Kingdom Prime Minister. We discussed preparations for the meeting with President Trump, as well as all our contacts with European countries and partners." So that was a very important phone call, and you need to understand that during that phone call, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom instructed the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, how to behave himself and how to act in this or that situation. Once again, this meeting finished without anything. The parties and Zelensky promised that during the next 3 months, Ukraine will have referendum where the population of Ukraine will be asked whether they are ready for territorial concessions or not. So it's just promises to make more promises in the future. But right after this meeting finished, we received a very important update from the United Kingdom. According to information we have, the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Zaporizhzhia, is going to return back to Ukraine in January. First of all, he's going to leave his position as an ambassador of Ukraine on the territory of the United Kingdom, and he is going to return back to Ukraine. The sources are saying that this is something like a message from the United Kingdom, and the message sounds like following: if you accept any proposal from the United States of America or from the Russian Federation, then we will send Zaluzhny to Ukraine, and he is going to be the next president of Ukraine, and he will replace you. So this is the message, and most likely the thing that Zaluzhny is going to leave his position and is going to return back to Ukraine means that maybe Zelensky made a decision, and maybe the United Kingdom made a decision as well. So as I understand, we're going to see a very interesting political game at the beginning of 2026 with referendums, with many other things, but the most important thing that Russia will not accept any truth, any ceasefire during the elections, referendum process, and the Russians will continue. And telling the truth, lots of things may change during this period of time, during the next 3 months. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. First, let's talk about the Stepnogorsk direction. Pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Russians were moving in the area of the settlement of Stepnogorsk under the fire of the armored forces of Ukraine. So this video confirms that the settlement of Stepnogorsk was taken by Russians. So if you remember, 2 days ago, the chief of the general staff of the armored forces of the Russian Federation confirmed that the settlement of Stepnogorsk was taken, and today we received the video that partially confirmed the line of combat contact, at least in the northwestern part of the settlement. Furthermore, several pro-Russian sources stated that Russians improved their positions further in the eastern direction along this dense network of the fortifications towards the settlement of Pavlovka. The Russians, I would like to remind you, are tasked to get as close as possible to the city of Orekhov, and the Russians want this to happen within the next 3 months. Now let's discuss the situation in the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction. Yesterday, something interesting happened, because yesterday in the evening, right after a conversation between Trump and Zelensky finished, pro-Ukrainian sources and pro-Russian sources began publishing this video. Here we can see how the armored forces of Ukraine were counter-attacking using lots of vehicles and infantry. The sources are saying that Ukrainians used more than 4 or even 6 armored vehicles, infantry fighting carriers, and up to 60 soldiers. They managed to break through Russian defense and to get very deep, and as you can see, according to geolocations. So we have 2 geolocations. One of the FPV drone attacks took place at this area. The second strike took place here. So Ukrainians using up to from 4 to 6 vehicles were moving something like this. Most likely, we don't know for sure how exactly the Ukrainians were moving. Telling the truth, nobody knows. And at these points, Ukraine's infantry fighting vehicles and tanks were destroyed. So Ukrainians were trying to counterattack. Some sources are saying that Ukrainians were trying to use this weather, this bad weather, with the purpose to get as deep as possible without being hit from FPV drones. And as you can see, they managed to do this. The weather was bad, but the Russians, despite the bad weather, counterattacked and destroyed Ukrainian vehicles. And some sources are saying that Ukrainians managed to land infantry, and some of them managed to survive because Russians later sent FPV drones to secure the territory. So as of now, we have added this area, but during the morning of the 29th of December, we received dozens of articles about this counter-offensive operation, and this counter-attack wasn't the only counter-attack during the previous 24 hours, and the Russians are saying that this attack was completely repelled. Ukrainians suffered losses, and currently pro-Russian sources publish video with prisoners of war, with the note that these prisoners of war were captured somewhere in this area. So as of now, we have added, but we believe that in 24, 48 or 72 hours, this polygon would be removed from the map. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in Novopavlovka direction. Several mappers reported that Russians improved their positions to the southwest of the settlement by taking under control several trenches and tree lines in this area. So this is another progress on the ground. As for the Pokrovsk direction, during the previous 12 hours, pro-Russian sources published lots of videos with prisoners of war from the city of Mirnograd. Also, there are still pockets of resistance, and every day more and more Ukrainians surrender. And today we received the video with this. At the same time, several pro-Ukrainian sources and neutral mappers reported that Russians managed to restore complete control over the settlement by the name of Novoshakhova. I would like to remind you that yesterday, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village of Vilna was recaptured by Russians, and today we got a report that Russians also answered the settlement of Novoshakhova. Based on the report published by a neutral mapper, we adjusted the map. We have adjusted the map. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. As we discussed in the previous videos, now the Russians are preparing a foothold along this line with the purpose to continue offensive operation towards the city by the name of Dobropolye and towards the villages and towns like Belitska and the small village of Dobropolye as well. As for the Konstantinovka direction, just a lot of FPV drone attacks without different changes. And another important thing is the Sivers direction. This is another area where Ukrainians launched a counter-offensive operation. This video was published by pro-Russian sources this night. Here we can see an infantry fighting vehicle of the armored forces of Ukraine completely alone without any support that was entering the settlement of Svetopokrivsk, also under protection of bad weather. But Russians using fiber optic drones attacked this vehicle and they destroyed this vehicle. Also during the morning we received lots of reports from pro-Russian sources that this attack was also repelled. So as you can see, there were just 2 soldiers, and right after the vehicle was damaged and destroyed, these soldiers began running away from these positions back to their positions. So this episode took place here. Based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything because the sources reported that this attack was repelled. At the same time, several mappers reported that Russians continue offensive operation and advancing towards the settlement of Riznikovka and Krivo Luka Zakitna. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. According to these reports, we added additional gray zone and additional contested area. So this is the situation. The Russians continue their offensive. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions in the area of the villages of Sosnovo, Yarova, Novoselovka. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians continue their offensive operation in this forest, in the Svetogorsk forest, with the purpose to establish a very strong foothold in this forest, and using this forest, Russians will be able to support their offensive operation towards the city of Sloviansk. Because forest, from experience we have, is the best place where you can hide FPV drone operators, and from these positions, Russians will support their offensive both in the direction of Liman and the Slaviansk agglomeration. As for the Kupiansk, Volchansk and Sumy directions, during the previous 12 hours, nothing interesting happened. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.